Hello and welcome to Cosmos with Bailey. I'm Bailey and I'm a clairvoyant psychic medium and spiritual healer based in New Zealand. Welcome. So yes, today's video is going to be quite a more of an intense one, and also going into very deeply embedded trauma and how this affects the spirit and how this affects your life and what happens on these psychic realms. So when I come to working with trauma as a healer, I'm looking at the energetic and higher vantage point through the realms as to why something is going on. And it's not just working with it as a spiritual healer. It's not just about what happened to you in the earthly realm. When it comes to any energy and spiritual healing, sometimes depending on what's happened, you have to move. This is what a really good healer does. They move through the realms of frequency almost to see what exactly is going on. Okay, psychic trauma. Trauma is an energetic nuance that we've experienced, and I just want to say with discernment here that I am speaking from a spiritual healer's perspective on trauma, and that I work through the realms. I am not just working on the physical level. Okay, so what did I say? Psychic trauma, family dynamics, and the inner child. So yeah, okay. Let's start with the inner child. So the inner child is the basis of where you want to start for spiritual healing. A lot of people tend to glorify and glamorize spiritual healing. They glorify the chakras, they glorify energy healing, and everything is made into this fantastical and alternate reality, which screams to me that person needs inner child healing. There's some element of dissociation from the earthly realm, and as a result, what we tend to do when we're trying to cope with pain and trauma is we will create fantastical realities, and we will also tend to glorify and glamorize spiritual ideologies to cover up how we're truly feeling. And a lot of people use the idea of spirituality to sort of bypass what has actually happened to them and what they're actually feeling. A lot of people will use psychic and spiritual ideas to cover up how they're actually feeling, what they've actually done, and use spirituality to create another personality or character in which to that's where you get the ego, spiritual ego as well, where you get personas, spiritual personas, and that is a type of dissociation from the spirit. You're not actually embodied in your spirit. Okay, so the reason why the inner child is vital when that inner child, and it takes a while to heal the inner child, it's not easy, it's dependent on your past lives, what's happened in this life with trauma and family dynamics. It's not just as simple as bringing up your inner child and hugging it. You have to move through many nuances and many layers with the inner child. And for that reason, going to see a healer can be very helpful, because they can guide you through that process in a more refined and clarified manner. So when the inner child is not healed, or we have experienced intense and prolonged trauma via family dynamics or stuff that has happened to us as a child, we will stay spiritually and energetically limited. And when the inner child isn't fully healed, we are not fully able to access the abundance of our spirit self. The inner child is a part of our spirit self, and this is the part of us that is joyous and happy and is comfortable in being the unknown and is playful. And for many of us, we've experienced so much trauma, even in our past lives. We've had traumatic past lives. And if we don't heal the inner child at some stage on our spiritual evolutionary journey on earth, we will stay in a state of disempowerment, really, really deep psychic and energetic disempowerment, spiritual immaturity. We will stay in a state where we just sort of replay out these patterns over and over and over, where it's coming from the inner child. Things like manipulating men. Maybe you manipulated your father. Maybe you get power from bullying other females because your mother bullied you as a child. And that's stuck. Your life force and your energy is stuck in a disempowered and traumatized inner child, and you can't fully expand into more of your mature spirit self without first coming face to face with the trauma and stuff that you've experienced in your family dynamics. So true healing starts at facing trauma. Okay, so what can happen? The inner child can block out memories, and you can have repressed memories. You could think that your family dynamic wasn't as bad as you thought it was. Your spirit can shut down and shut off. So you're in a very, very watered down spiritual state because the inner child is traumatized. And you're not going to be able to have full access to your spirit and your soul. So until you heal and integrate the empowered inner child, you will not have full access to your soul energies because you're just trapped in this way of being. This also inhibits true psychic perception. I've seen a lot of healers and psychics who have clearly not cleared and fully integrated the inner child and teen trauma. And the intuition or insights will be coming from the insecurities and the trauma of the inner child, and that will be their intuition. So you can't really have expanded psychic, psychic interference. I'll come to psychic interference. You can't have, you can have, if you don't heal the psychic, the energy of the inner child, your psychic perception is going to be very, very limited and caught in pain and trauma. And whatever intuitions you're receiving, you're not going to be able to have higher, clarified intuition and guidance and empowerment because you're disempowered in the spirit and the inner child. And that's how your intuition is going to move through. Yeah, so what I said, trauma masters intuition. And what you think is your intuition is really your inner child that's traumatized. Fear-based projections that are not concurrent with real reality. We can come face to face with circumstances or people in the earthly realm and respond from the inner child pain and trauma and believe that it's that person that's making you feel that way when really your inner child's being triggered. Alright, so I'm going to get into now, so that's why you need to heal the inner child spiritually, because you're not going to move out of a very limited perception of energy, of intuition and psychic energy per se. Yeah, okay, so this brings me to the point of psychic trauma and what happens in the spirit. So what happens if you don't clear and integrate that trauma that's happened, whatever it is, abuse, manipulation, heavy manipulation, sustained physical or psychological abuse from a parent or a caregiver? What happens energetically and spiritually is that your energy body and your spirit is not operating at its full vital life force potential. And when there is any type of unhealed pain, wounding, or trauma, there will be entity attachments and psychic interference that will keep you in these sustained loops. So I'm coming from a healer's perspective, and it's not something to be fearful of, because once you move through that disempowerment and that pain and heal that trauma, you release, you come back into full spiritual self-empowerment, and you deny trauma and you deny interference and psychic interference. If you are getting sustained psychic interference and you can't handle it, you need to get a better backbone and you need to heal your psychic trauma. Psychic trauma is energetic trauma and stuff that you've experienced. If you're constantly, I'm getting psychically attacked, if you are constantly getting interfered with, there's something going on in your energy body where you're not fully spiritually empowered. There's always going to be a little bit of interference here and there, but if it is sustained, there'll be some type of sustained trauma going on within you that is entities. And just like I say, we have higher spiritual beings and we have lower entity beings that are of the lower psychic realms. And when there is trauma operating through our energy body, we are a match to lower psychic phenomena and entity attachments in the lower realms. Trauma is of the lower realms of the earth. So if you heal and face your trauma and your inner child and your teens and what happened in your family dynamics, you move into higher spiritual realms of self-empowerment and your whole entire life changes. But what happens with the trauma and the psychic entities and the psychic energies with trauma in the realms of healing is that these entities and energies will try and convince you that you can't move out of it, and they want you to stay in the sustained loop of trauma. And there's so much more going on in the psychic realms when you have trauma, and this is why even with PTSD and responses like that, it'll be something going on in the energy body that just keeps repeating onto you. And then this is why I talk about medical medium work, essentially doing healing work like this with the inner child and the teens and the spirit and whatnot. You really do need a medical medium because they'll be working with the spiritual realms and many different realms to see and getting the guidance to move you out of spiritual self disempowerment and the lower psychic realms, which is where you get a lot of psychic interference. And as soon as you clear and heal that trauma and move into the higher realms, you can navigate lower psychic phenomena from a place of self-empowerment. It's a very different reality and you're not getting bombarded. Alright, so this is also how you get hauntings and interference. If there's high levels of trauma, or you have repeated dark nightmares, or you're having interference dreams, what can happen if you have a lot of trauma is you can mistake dreams for clairvoyance or communication from the spirit realms when actually it's communication from your trauma and your entities and entities that are attached to that trauma. And if someone has triggered your trauma, you can believe that that person made you feel a certain way when it's your trauma, and you'll have dreams and whatnot. There'll be a lot of transference and projection onto the person who has triggered you. And as I said, you get hauntings, you can get beings and naughty spirits and demonic energies coming in to convince you of certain things and to turn you on people. I've seen that happen. High levels of psychic interference until you get a backbone and clear your trauma. Yeah, and it just depends, because what happens is we believe this traumatized way of being is very normal. The inner child, the family dynamics, it's not spiritually normal. And at some point on the spiritual evolution, you have to move through the trauma and into spiritual empowerment. And it takes a while. And you've got to be pretty strong in the spirit. Okay, so what I've also seen is when people haven't cleared that inner child, we get fantasy and delusion with spiritual things. So this is how you get starseed. I am a starseed channel. That to me straight away looks like there is uncleared, unprocessed childhood trauma. And they have created a false and fantastical reality. There's probably some entities or whatnot working that are, as I said, you can get dreams and intuitions that are not really what's going on if you have trauma. That's why I'm very, very discerning myself with any healers or intuitives or psychics. I'm looking for someone who's pretty mature and pretty grounded and not away with the fairies. If someone's away with the fairies and they're talking about starseeds, intersection and galactic beings or whatever, they're not rooted in the earthly realm. They're not fully spiritually rooted in their physical body. And you do not want to be going to getting guidance from anyone who is creating fantastical realities about the spiritual. It's inner child, straight up. And dissociation. Yeah, so if your inner child is not fully empowered or you haven't cleared your teens, you're not going to want to be in your body, because your body is going to feel horrible to be in, because there's so much hurt and pain from how you were treated as a child, or if it was sustained abuse, sustained physical abuse. you are not going to want to be in your body, and that is 100% normal. To dissociate, for many of us, we are very traumatized, and we are completely spiritually dissociated from our body and our true spirits, and we're just running off trauma. And you don't want to be in your body, and therefore that's how you get entity attachments and psychic interference and whatnot, because you're not fully in charge of your body. Spiritually, it's the trauma and the responses and your inner child, your wounded inner child state that's in charge, and there'll be all sorts of stuff going on in the aura and in the energy body. I can speak from my own experiences that around about sometime this year, I actually had my spirit enter back into my body. And what I was doing was I was using the gym to cope with the feelings in my body that I had very little awareness about. And so we tend to go gung-ho into things without realizing, to try and cope with these feelings and these traumas that are happening within the body. And as soon as I go really hard on the elliptical, I love the gym, but I was also using it as a way to cope with my circumstances and what I was experiencing. And as soon as my spirit popped back in, I almost felt, oh my gosh, I'm back in my body, and my body belongs to me. And when you've been in trauma and sustained abuse, your body doesn't feel like it belongs to you. And so you're not going to make wise, empowered decisions for yourself, because you don't know that you can, because you've never been given the opportunity. And this is why the matrix, the idea of the matrix, have you cleared your inner childhood and your teens first before you go resonating with repression of the matrix? And as I said, you're going to get unclear psychic perception that's going to be masked by the inner child trauma and spiritual immaturity. You're not going to be fully adult, mature, spiritually mature, and you're just going to come from this place of immaturity when you're responding to other people. The spirit. Okay, what else have I written down here? You're not gonna, so if you don't clear the inner child in teens or face family trauma, you don't have to go to spiritual healer. You could go to a counselor, but I am speaking from a spiritual healer's perspective with psychic phenomena and whatnot. And so you're not going to get full access to your spirit and your spirit gifts in past lives. You also may need to do some past life healing. That you may have had past lives with your family in this current incarnation that needs to be cleared. You just don't know. There's a lot more going on than just narcissism. So you're not going to have full access to your spirit empowerment if you don't heal the inner child, and you're just going to stay in a very, very watered down spiritual state. You're not going to have spirit gifts and abilities come back online. You're not going to get clear and concise, really clarified intuition that is very, very empowering in the physical realm. What else have I got? Family patterning is very hard to break out of, and depending on what you experienced growing up and what you were imprinted with, this will create a type of way of life for you that needs to be cleared. Leaving family dynamics once you've cleared your inner child and trauma. So once you have cleared the inner child and the trauma and the stuff that you experienced, it is very highly, and you could be the black sheep, I don't know, but it's very highly likely that you will leave the family dynamic because you've moved into a higher realm of being with your spirit, and you'll no longer resonate or vibrate at the frequency of the family trauma once you've cleared it. So it's very normal and natural and healthy to sort of leave the family dynamic and sort of put really strong boundaries there, because you've moved into self-empowerment, so you no longer need to play out the victim-perpetrator with the mother, father, the sister, the brother, whatever it is. And because you can evolve and mature into vaster, grander spiritual states, it doesn't mean that the family of origin is ready to do so. Breaking out of trauma origins. And once you've done that, you get an incredible amount of spiritual empowerment. Moving into higher spiritual states in all life. Once you clear that trauma, it can be very hard and very trying, but once you clear it, you really understand what true empowerment means in the spirit. So I'm going to talk about the purpose of psychic trauma and ultimate empowerment through disempowerment. So sometimes what happens is that we can experience some really really unloving and really disrespectful circumstances in the earthly realm. And we tend to believe with spirituality that we need to say that people need to find more love or people need to do this and that. But the reality of where we are at now in the earthly realm and what we're evolving into, we are in a very in-between state. And spiritual self-empowerment comes from loving yourself first. You're not responsible for loving someone else or making someone else find love. You're not here to enable and support abusive behavior. That is taking a spiritual step backwards. However, once you move out of that family trauma and family dynamics, you will stop allowing and tolerating people to be really, really disrespectful to you. And you'll move and you will choose for yourself where you want to put your energies in your life force. And you'll have very, very low tolerance for out of alignment behavior. That doesn't mean that you go, being self-righteous from your ego and yelling at people and whatnot. It just means that you choose to put yourself in loving situations and you're in charge of your life force with the healed inner child. And you are listening to your body and your essence and your spirit because you're not dominated by trauma or your mother's or your father's beliefs. So there's a purpose for experiencing these things, but it doesn't excuse it, nor does it allow it. I think that's a very, very important thing to say. When we are very, very heart-governed and gentle, empathic souls, it can be easy to let things slide or to say, oh, that person's in trauma, it's okay. It's not okay. You're not here to allow or enable someone else's unloving behavior. That's not spiritual evolution and that's not spiritual advancement for you as a soul. Okay, from density and illusion to expansion. What did I write here? Yeah, from density and illusion and trauma and limitation to expansion and creation and attunement with the cosmos, with your spirit self. Once we tend to move through some real disempowering experiences, we get the gift of spiritual empowerment. And that means that life is in your hands. And some people do not want to change and some people do not want to evolve out of the trauma because it keeps them in a very safe state where they don't have to make changes. We've all seen those relationships where people just love to enter into abusive relationships, even though they know it's bad, but they love the drama. They love the woe is me. They love getting the attention for being a victim, and that's spiritual disempowerment. Because once you move from density and illusion and trauma to expansion and openness with the cosmos, there is vast potential and vast creative ability, and you can literally try and choose. And the opportunities will scare people. And and you move out of the entity realms, you get a backbone with spiritual and psychic phenomena. You don't allow entities or people or demons to enter into your realms. There's just so much vast power that can come from healing the inner child and psychic wounding, which is trauma. And if you don't clear that psychic wounding, you are leaving yourself very, very open to energies that want to take and control your life force in your body. So if you're in trauma, you're not fully governed in your spirit self in the vessel. You're governed by trauma and hurts and pains. And until the inner child is healed and fully empowered, it's very hard to, until that inner child is fully healed and empowered, you will stay in almost like that victim perpetrator consciousness, and you'll keep almost subconsciously convincing yourself to stay a certain way because the inner child is so fearful. Okay, anything else? Psychic trauma in the inner child, entities, lower realm beings, moving into higher spiritual heights. For many of us, we like to stay in a state of trauma because we don't know that there's more, or we're afraid of the unknown, and we are very, very afraid that if we actually heal the inner child and we heal the trauma and we heal our mother, father, family dynamic stuff, Who are we? What storylines do we have to use to keep ourselves disempowered? And we run out of excuses to not do things and to not be a kind and generous and integral individual. And we sabotage, the inner child will sabotage, your teen self will sabotage until those parts of you are healed and integrated. And then you move into true spiritual self-empowerment. Yeah, so that's sort of like what medical medium work involves, and people tend to glamorize and glorify medium work. I know another really amazing medical medium that I haven't been to, but I love her stuff. Her name's Alex March, and she talks about the inner child as well, and psychic phenomena and empathy and what goes on in the body with trauma. And she'd be a really good person. Her Instagram would probably be a really good place to look at, because she also talks about the inner child, and I'm very deeply resonant with what she says, because I've also experienced, and I see it all the time in healing work, if you don't clear and heal the inner child, you're going to stay stuck in fantasy and illusion. You're probably going to resonate with stuff like the New Age propaganda and never fully actualize your spirit self. Okay, so thank you so much for watching. You do not have to live with trauma, and you do not have to live with PTSD. It can be cleared, but it is very, very, and you have to feel the emotions and everything that's happened in order for it to be released. There's no quick fix, and you can't skirt around healing the inner child and stuff that's happened to you in childhood. You really do have to feel it and let it move through you. And yeah, it's definitely not, don't glorify and glamorize it, because you miss out on living life in a rainbow as opposed to black and white if you don't heal that inner child. Thank you so much for watching, and please leave any comments or messages about what you think and your experiences have been. I would love to hear them. And if you are interested in a medical medium session, I do one-off sessions, and they're 1.5 hours, simply because you can move through more in 1.5 hours than what I receive from the spirit realms. You can also book packages with me up to 3 sessions if you want to work on something that you know has been there a very long time. When you go to see someone like me, I am guided by the spiritual realms, and I begin to pick up what's going on in the energy body and why we can get very, very deep as to why that goes on and what's actually going on in the energy body and in the realms of your being, and why you're so limited and stuck and in pain and trauma. Okay, thank you so much for watching, and I hope that was helpful.